Hi there, and welcome to Open Class. It is a special one. We're going to do a catch-up because I didn't get to do any Open Class last week. I was traveling, so therefore it's going to be sort of a kind of like a mega Open Class, a bunch of questions we're going to go over. Hopefully this will deliver a lot of value. And as always, nothing is medical advice, just general thoughts and questions. Let's get into it. We are going to start with a question from Sophia. Let's read this together. Sophie's, I should say, says, "Hi Daniel, I suffer from anxiety during the day as well as the night. Would the online program help me to learn techniques to be generally less anxious?" I want to say here that, what I'm really realizing is that insomnia, can really be something that teaches you about yourself. Insomnia comes from a fear of being awake at night. It's a kind of a phobia. And anxiety comes from, it's like a fear of the unknown, or it's often like, anxiety, we're all anxious at some point in our lives, right? We're anxious very often, right? It's a normal emotion. But when we don't want to be anxious, when we try to escape it, don't want to have it, then we have more anxiety. When we don't want to be awake, we're afraid of being awake. We're actually afraid of the fear of being awake, etc. Then we have insomnia. So it's really all the same. So I definitely think what you learn about insomnia also applies to anxiety, whether you learn here in like open classes and videos here, or you sign up for a program. Doesn't matter. There are no secrets. It's all the same education, but I definitely think it works with both. And also, a lot of people ask, like, I have so much anxiety. Can this really help me? And I'd say it's almost the opposite. Like, the more anxiety you have, the more you have to work with, the more kind of thoughts, feelings, beliefs are obviously there that you can kind of really study and learn about yourself, etc. So hope that helps, Sophie. And we are going to look at a question from Linda. She says, "Hi, Daniel. You addressed my question in your open class today as anonymous. Okay. Thanks as always for the tips. I think what I was referring to was more like performance anxiety, which I know you spoke about recently. Only now I can't find that video. Can you please tell me which one that was and whether it was open class or an inside video? By the way, I appreciate so much how you're always so reassuring. It is extremely helpful to me during this uneasy time in my life." Thanks. Anytime, Linda. Thank you so much for for all the support and for submitting questions. I don't know where that was, but I can say this, that I've not done any specific video on performance anxiety. I talk a lot about that. Insomnia in many ways is like a performance anxiety. The more you try to sleep, the less sleep you get, right? But I have not done a specific insomnia insight video on that, so it's probably in an open class episode that I have talked about it. But I can just say again that there's nothing special in that class. I always teach this, the same thing I teach all the time, which is basically that when it comes to performance insomnia, is that, for example, the basic truth is, again, that the more you try to sleep, the less you sleep, the more struggle you have. But a couple of things that often really contribute to this kind of performance anxiety quality of the insomnia is when you, for example, you check the time and you're like, I didn't sleep at all. Dang it, I need to sleep more. Performance anxiety, right? Or, oh, I slept a lot. Oh, I have to do that again. Performance anxiety. So you can see that tracking time, checking how much you slept, pretty much always leads to performance anxiety. And also, what else does that? What I call upping the stakes, meaning like, if I sleep well, then I get to go on that trip, or if I can only sleep better, then I get to do this thing. Performance anxiety, again, more pressure to sleep. Or when you attribute a lot to how you slept, like, oh, I felt so tired today. That's because I didn't sleep much. Performance anxiety, right? So those are just little pointers, but hope that helped, and thanks for the support, Linda. Okay, let's move ahead here and see what Prakash is asking about. "I am 22 and first had insomnia when I was 17 years old, following an extremely stressful period in my life. I then did all the wrong things. I went to bed earlier, etc. For the next 6 months. I suffered greatly. I then went through CBT, and this helped. The stress is now almost non-existent, and I have learned to be less anxious and worried. For the last 3 years, I can go to bed easily around 1 a.m., sleep in less than 10 minutes, but I naturally wake up after about 6.5 hours or so, around 7:30 a.m., and at this time, I feel conscious, but also in a dozing state, and I also feel tired and fatigued. I've tried 2 approaches to deal with this: slightly early morning awakenings with stimulus control, that's getting out of bed and relaxing in bed and enjoying the rest until my alarm at 8 o'clock. I've tried both approaches and still have not been able to improve my sleep, and improvements have seemed to be stalled for the last 3 years. I've reached this 6-hour, 20-minute benchmark and haven't been able to improve my sleep beyond this. However, I can get on with my day and be productive, but I still feel the effects of insomnia, such as heavy eyes and fatigue throughout the day. Before my insomnia, I slept around 7.5 hours and awoke feeling good and refreshed, but now I never wake up feeling refreshed. I usually wake up feeling groggy and tired. I understand that quality of sleep is better than quantity, and I would be happy sleeping only 6 hours if I woke up refreshed and feeling good, but this is never the case. The heavy eyes is a particular issue to me, as I feel it constantly, and then this makes me think of my insomnia throughout the day. I would greatly appreciate if you can share your thoughts on what I can do to improve my sleep so I can wake up feeling better and experience fewer daytime symptoms of fatigue and heavy eyes. I think starting with the last thing we read there, the question is, how can I improve my sleep so that I feel better during the day so I don't think about my sleep so much, right? And, I think something immediately that strikes me here is check in the last Talking Insomnia episodes 58 and 57, Talking Insomnia 58 and 57. Both Sarah and Betul describes very much the same. Sleeping a sort of like pretty normal, typical amount, right? 6.5 hours is what most people sleep, but not feeling refreshed and feeling tired. So check out those episodes, Prakash. I think that will really help. Briefly here, let's go with the trouble and desire model. So when someone has, let's say, a night where they had a lot of stress, like you did, and they don't sleep much at all, well, that's completely normal and expected, right? If somebody has a lot of stress and they sleep great, then that's a little unusual. So let's say somebody has a lot of stress, they sleep little, but they don't respond much to it. Like the safety system in the brain never really gets to a point where it thinks that there's something wrong or something that should be fixed or a problem solved there. Well, then when the stress goes away, then sleep naturally starts happening again, right? So there's some trouble with sleeping, but there's no desire for sleep. And when I say desire, it's that wanting, longing, hoping for, begging for, thinking about sleep. Well, that's desire. So you can have some trouble sleeping when there's some stress, but if that doesn't trigger any desire for sleep, then there's no ongoing problem with sleep, right? So let's say there's some stress, but that does trigger some desire for sleep. You're like, how can I sleep a little bit better? Well, guess what? This preoccupation, this tension that now builds is going to create some more trouble. And then with more trouble, there's a stronger desire. With stronger desire, there's more trouble, etc., etc. This is insomnia. Is one way to describe insomnia. Now, when you're in this when in this loop of some trouble and some desire for sleep, then it seems like if I can just sleep a little better, then my desire for sleep is going to go down. Everything is going to be better, right? But the problem is that wanting to sleep more or better is what drives the entire the entire struggle. So you cannot focus on how can I sleep more or better. You have to focus on the desire, because when the desire for sleep it comes down a little bit, when it becomes more acceptable to be, okay, I'm somewhat tired today, but that's okay. I didn't sleep that much, but that's okay. When the desire goes down, then the trouble also goes down, and then it's like, oh wow, it happened a little easier. Then then it becomes even easier to reduce the desire even more, and then you reverse this whole thing. You can check out the playlist called "This Is Natto," and there's a specific episode on the trouble and desire model, which I think also can help. So to answer your question, we can see that there is a lot of even though you're not sleeping like a very short amount of time, there is a lot of preoccupation with sleep. There's a lot of trying to sleep more, trying to feel better, trying to figure it out, etc. So simple things like setting an alarm in the morning, but not knowing what time it is, not tracking how much you slept. That can really, really help. Understand that how you sleep, how you feel during the day is not very correlated with how much you slept, but how much you wanted to sleep, how much you track sleep, how much you think about, how much attention you pay towards sleep. When you understand that, it again becomes easier to be like, okay, I'm going to try less, I'm going to ponder less, I'm going to kind of let things be, and then things happen very easily. So I think those are the most important points there, Prakash. Hope that helped. And as always, if it didn't, if you have follow-up questions, then please let me know. Send another email or message. Okay, then we'll move to Alfonso. Hi, Daniel. I'm going to tell you my situation in a short story. Last year, back in April, I started taking a bunch of drugs because there were stimulants, because I was going through so much, probably the lowest point I ever hit in my life. After 6 months, all the drugs I took started affecting my day, my personality changed, I had slow reactions, etc. But my nightmare started back in December of last year when I started having a weird head feeling. I can't describe, it's just weird. From that day, I lost the ability to sleep till now. Coach, you have to believe me, since my head started feeling some kind of way, I believe the drugs I took did some damage to my brain. I lost the ability to sleep. At first, I would lay awake in bed all night without being able to fall asleep and wake up the next day early in the morning without even feeling sleepy, none of that. Long story short, since December till now, I cannot sleep. I never feel sleepy. I lost track of time. I never have the feeling of dozing off. I believe I really damaged myself. It's not normal being able to sleep, and sleep is vital. I'm currently still seeing a specialist after the tons I've seen since the issue started. Coach, please give me the best advice you can. What can I do to get better and feel like myself again? Is there a way to reverse the damage I did to myself? Before I took all those drugs, I never had problems with sleeping. Actually, the problem was staying awake. I would fall asleep so fast to the point I need days just to finish an episode on Netflix. I need your best advice, Coach. None of those sleeping pills are putting me to sleep. I am desperate. Alfonso, it was Alfonso here. Sorry to hear of all these things that have happened, but glad you're here. And I want to say that there's nothing here that is strange or unusual at all. Nothing we don't come across quite often on this channel. And so the first thing I'd like to talk about here is that the sleep system, like the brain's sleep system, is it's undamageable, unless, I don't know, that it, there may be some circumstance that I'm not aware of, but or that is very, very rare, like, the African, trypanosomiasis or like things like that. But, that doesn't happen unless you're like in, that's I'm going on a limb here. But what I want to say is this, that it is very common to, you can't really damage the sleep system, but it's very common to believe that you have done so. And the net effect becomes the outcome, so to speak, becomes the same if you have lost the sleep system or you've lost faith in the sleep system. The same thing happens. You sleep very little and there's a lot of trouble. But again, this is very, very common. Somebody starts taking medication and it's in a time of stress and change, and then they sleep very little, and then of course it seems like the medication did something, so now that person cannot sleep. Or it's somebody who comes off a medication. That's also very common. Somebody stops taking medication and don't sleep, and they think, oh, when I came off the medication, something changed in my brain, thinking that the brain is damaged, there's a sleep switch in my brain that's damaged, I have a hormonal imbalance, I have a neurotransmitter imbalance. Those are some very, very common concerns. But insomnia is really driven by fear. So insomnia is driven by fear. Again, the fear of having damaged your brain is a common fear that drives insomnia. So that's the number one. Number two, there's some kind of a phenomenon I feel that we call the Bermuda or the Bermuda Triangle effect, which is when sleep has vanished, like sleepiness has vanished. You haven't felt sleepy for a month or even longer. And this is also not uncommon at all. It seems often really strange because you don't sleep at night, and then you're like, how can I not be sleepy during the day? But it's really hyperarousal. When your brain is in this kind of safety mode, fight or flight, then you don't feel sleepy at all. And that can go on for a long, long, long period of time. But and what really helps is education. And when you understand how the mind works, when you understand that this is not unusual, this is actually very common, I understand why this happens, then everything kind of calms down. Then the brain stops trying to figure out what's going on and looking for a solution, looking for a clue, like problem solving. All that stops happening, and kind of the battle fades, the fear fades, and then you start feeling sleepy again, and then you see that, oh, it was all just anxiety, and et cetera, et cetera. So education, I think, is the key here. Starting with this playlist called This is Natto in the description of this video and any other video that is recent can be a great place to start learning. So I think those were the big ones, Alfonso. Okay, let's move ahead and look at a message from Jocelyn. Hi, Daniel. I just came across your channel recently, and I've been watching a few videos. I've had early morning awakening insomnia for over a year now. It started last year in March of 2020. Last year, March, I had a month when I was having bad nightmares, waking up to my nightmares around 3 a.m. I went to bed around 9 p.m. and I would wake up to my nightmares around 3 a.m. The nightmares eventually went away, but I was still waking up at 3 a.m. every morning. This went on for a few months, and I was getting frustrated because I never had any problems with sleep before. I saw a sleep psychologist. I took a CBT-I class. I tried sleep restriction, but my bedtime was 12, and I woke up. My wake-up time was 6 a.m. For someone who usually went to bed at 9, staying up until 12 was extremely difficult. I eventually gave up because it was just too hard, and I wasn't seeing any improvements. The year went by, and my sleep still hasn't improved. I decided to try sleep restriction again in December 2020. It was working okay, but when I finally moved up my bedtime to 10:30 p.m., I was still waking up after 6 hours. I then got COVID in January. It messed me up, my sleep schedule. I went to bed 8, 9 since I was so tired. After I recovered from COVID, I still had insomnia. I still woke up around sleeping about 6 hours. I've tried herbs, natural sleep aids, low doses melatonin. Everything works for a little, and then it stops working. Right now, my wake-up time is 6 a.m. and my body just wakes up at 4 or 5, and it's hard to fall back asleep. But I'm not wide awake. I feel like I'm getting very light sleep during my last hour. I've tried going to bed at 9, 10, even 11. I'm actually going to bed at 11 now to try sleep restriction again. But I saw on your channel that you actually don't recommend sleep restriction anymore. My sleep hours used to be 9 to 5:30, and I wish I could sleep like that again. Few questions for you. If I'm waking up before getting my full 7 to 8 hours of sleep at around 5, 6 hours, is this also considered hyperarousal? What causes the hyperarousal? I don't usually go to bed thinking that I won't get a good night of sleep, or at least I try not to think about it. So why am I still waking up in the early morning? Is it okay to wear earplugs to sleep? My partner snores sometimes, and he'll wake me up in the middle of the night sometimes. I used to not have to wear earplugs to go to bed, but after my son started, I feel like I can't sleep without it. Can I eventually stop wearing them and sleep through my partner snoring? I do have general anxiety and mild depression, and I'm working on it, but I've had it since college, and the insomnia only started last year after the nightmares. Why? Is it true that if you have depression, it's easier to have insomnia? I've always been a light sleeper, and it's hard for me to even take naps during the day and sleep well when I go to trips, camping, etc. Is there a way to fix this? When I don't sleep well, I feel dizzy, have irregular heartbeats, headaches, and can't concentrate at work. Do you have any suggestions? Some days I feel so hopeless and depressed, and sometimes even think about how I can't go on like this. Is there really hope for me? What is the cure to the type of insomnia that I have? This past weekend, I didn't do sleep restriction and stopped caring about sleep. I went to bed at 9:30, but I still woke up at 4. Couldn't fall back asleep for an hour or 2. How long does it take to return to normal sleep? I get frustrated and lose hope very quickly. So I know this is a lot of questions. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Anytime, Jocelyn. I'm glad that you found the channel, and I hope you are finding a lot of good content here. And let's take a look at these questions. I want to say that your story is very, very common. Nothing strange or unusual whatsoever. It's really always the same. There's some type of period of sleeping little, and then the brain starts being afraid of sleeping little. You may not recognize that. Sometimes you may go to bed thinking, like, you think that you don't think about sleep, but kind of like subconsciously it's there. I mean, obviously there's a lot of thinking about sleep, right? Because you wrote this whole entire message. And the waking up is, we all wake up multiple times at night. And because the brain doesn't think it's strange to wake up, it's kind of like we kind of easily fall back asleep. We don't even remember waking up. But when the brain has started thinking that you shouldn't wake up, it's not good to be awake at night, you should sleep more, etc., then just the kind of normal waking up that we all have triggers this, like, oh, this shouldn't be happening. And then you have kind of like a more complete awakening. And then you can have this kind of hyper arousal infused sleep too, when you're kind of dozing in and out, like you don't know if you're slept or not, etc., etc. So And sleep restriction, yeah, I think I don't believe in that at all anymore. I do believe it can help to have like a certain wake up time and wake up about, I mean, not necessarily wake up time because we don't control when we wake up, right? But kind of get out of bed about the same time every morning, just so you don't kind of chase sleep. You don't stay in bed and try to get more. And then also go timeless, like not know what time it is. So if you want to set an alarm for 5:30 and like stop checking the time at 8:30 or something like that, and I think that could really help. But let's go over some of these questions. Maybe we can even go through all of them. Let's try. Here, if I'm waking up before getting my full 7 or 8 hours of sleep, is this also considered hyperarousal? I would say like everything that is insomnia, like, when you're not sleeping well or sleeping less than a certain amount because of the fear of being awake, not wanting to be awake, I call all that hyperarousal. Definitely. What causes hyperarousal? Hyperarousal can come from anxiety, kind of like the fear of the unknown. It can come from anger. It can come from frustration. It can come from curiosity. It can come from puzzlement. Anything that you can imagine that puts you in a kind of a little bit more alert state, that causes hyperarousal. Why am I still waking up early mornings? Again, nothing here is medical advice, but based on what we read here, it could very well be hyperarousal. Is it okay to wear earplugs to sleep? It's totally okay. The problem becomes when you think you slept thanks to the earplugs, when you think like, I need them to sleep. Because then it's kind of like, it becomes this kind of seeding of confidence. You think there's something wrong with you. But if you know that the only thing the earplugs do is that they remove some sound, and maybe if there's less sound, sleep can happen easier potentially. But there's nothing magical about the earplugs. If you slept well without earplugs before, there's no reason why you couldn't sleep well with them now. Just if you know that they're not important, then that really helps. Can I eventually stop wearing them? I see absolutely no reason you couldn't stop wearing them. 100%. It's just again about education and understanding. I've had it since college. I've had anxiety since college, and the insomnia only started last year. Very, very common. Like a lot of people have a lot of anxiety, but the anxiety is again like this kind of safety mode when the brain is like keeping you safe from things that are often not real threats. But sometimes, being awake at night has just not landed on that safety radar. So even if a person has had experienced a lot of anxiety, then if there's never been a fear of being awake, that person may sleep well. What often happens is somebody like randomly has a panic attack at night, and that's when the insomnia starts, because then the brain goes like, oh, this is another problem. You can be awake at night, right? So nothing strange or unusual at all here. Is it true that if you have depression, it's easier to have insomnia? I want to say that they go hand in hand, if you will. They all come from the same place. Escapism. If you want not to be anxious, if you try to be calm, you try to not experience the anxious feeling, then the brain interprets that as like, you don't want to listen to me. Like, I'm trying to make you safe. So therefore you become more anxious. The more you want to be calm, the more anxious you become. Like the more you try to make yourself calm, the more anxious you become. Same things with other emotions like sadness. The more you don't want to be sad, the more you try to escape that feeling, the more sad you become. The more you want to escape being awake at night, the more that's treated as a threat, the more insomnia you have. So they all come from the same place. And so if you started kind of escaping one thing, then the brain can think like, oh, I have to keep myself safe from other things. So that's why you often have many of them at the same time. Is there a way to fix this? Insomnia is, despite what is often, what it may seem like out there, it's just about education, really, learning and having some courage. And then you see that, oh, the less I try, the easier sleep happens, etc. Nothing strange about like that. And there's nothing to fix really, because there's nothing broken. It's just, again, a little bit of confusion in the brain. When I don't sleep well, I feel dizzy, have irregular heartbeats, headaches, can't concentrate at work. Do you have any suggestions? There's one episode here called, if you Google like Insomnia Insight Battle Scars, that's a good one to listen to. And there's also Insomnia Insight number 322, which is about hyperarousal. Listening to those, I think, can really help there. Is there really hope for me? There's hope for everyone that's willing to learn, 100%. What is the cure to the type of insomnia I have? There is really no cure because there's no disease, there's no problem. It's just, again, some misunderstanding in the brain. It's trying to keep you safe, but it's just a little confused. So it's just education. That's all really. That's the biggest one for sure. Self-kindness is good too, not being hard on yourself. How long does it take to return to normal sleep? It depends. When the brain is kind of being really scared, it always takes some time for it to become unscared and see that there is no threat. For some people, that can take maybe a few weeks. For some people, it may take several months. But that's typically kind of an idea of how long it takes for most people. But it's always good to not have any particular time. The more you focus on time, the longer it takes. The more you like, this educational process will take some time. I don't know exactly how. That's usually the easiest and fastest too, actually. Okay, so let's hope that helped, and stay in touch. Thanks for all the support. Sam says, hi, Daniel. How are you? I'm good, thank you. It's been long since I wrote to your channel, which often, is a good sign, and it was here. I did really good for a couple of weeks with my sleep, but since the last 2 weeks, my sleep was pretty bad. Before I started watching your channel and follow your insights, I used to have trouble with both getting to sleep and staying asleep. Now, after following your insights for a long period, more than a year, I'm able to concur with my anxiety. I think it meant probably conquer my anxiety with getting to sleep, but staying asleep is still challenging. As you suggested, I'm watching some shows on TV, and when I fall asleep, I just shut it down, fall asleep. Then comes the problem. I will wake up after some time, then I can't fall asleep, which gives me heavy eyes and headaches the next day. I'm struggling with this for 2 weeks. Do you have any suggestions? I think I recently added a new playlist, which actually just has 2 videos right now, but I'm going to add more, and it's called Speed Bumps. And this to me sounds like what I call a speed bump, which is when somebody has done well for a while and then there's some more struggle. And I think the most important thing is to see that when you slept with less struggle, you didn't conquer anything. You didn't win or like defeat anything, when you think that, then there's going to be some more struggle, because if we want peace and peaceful sleep, then our means have to be peaceful. The more we fight, the more fighting there's going to be, right? And when we don't fight, there's no fighting. So that's just important to know when it comes to anxiety and insomnia, that as long as we think there's something to conquer or overcome or beat or fight or win like that, then there will be struggle. But when we see that it's abandoning fighting, there's nothing to overcome, there's no problem, that's when peace happens. And when you've gone through a period where there was less struggle, sometimes it seems like I had something, I had figured it out, I did something, but now I can't do it. But in fact, it's the opposite. It's that for a time being, you were actually okay with being awake. You were not trying to sleep, and that's magical. That's where magic comes from. You abandoned the struggle, and now there's this kind of like some more trouble, and now you're kind of tempted to do something again, and you're wondering what it should be. But in reality, the most important is just seeing that sleeping well comes from nothing. You were kind of brave and courageous, and you were like okay with being awake. If you were awake, that was okay. You didn't check the time. Maybe you watched some more TV. Maybe you had a book prepared. And so I think that's the most important. Seeing that you've already seen the magic, and now you kind of like baited. It's kind of like this bait here, like, hey, something's a problem. Do something. Do something. Do something. And if you say I'm going to do something, then there's going to be some more trouble. But if you don't take the bait and you're just like, yeah, I have some more struggle right now, some more trouble right now, but I'm not going to change anything. I know why. There's a little bit of residual fear in the brain from the last time I had trouble sleeping, but I don't need to do anything. Then peace will come back. I think that is the key here. Okay, so I hope that helps, Sam. Let's see what Cindy has to say. Cindy says, when I wake up at 3 a.m. after 3 hours of sleep, why do I have what feels like an adrenaline rush? Then I can't go back to sleep. Well, insomnia really happens when there's fear. And the fear with insomnia is that the brain has started to think that being awake at night is a threat and a problem and something that's dangerous, right? So when you wake up and the part of the brain's like, oh, what happened? Did I only sleep 3 hours again, or is it 3 a.m. again? And you see the time and it's like, again, it's 3 a.m. Oh no, I can't escape this thing. It's never gonna end. It's gonna happen again. It's gonna get worse. Then you have that adrenaline rush, right? And so nothing strange or unusual about that whatsoever. I think what can really help here is the simple act of not knowing what time it is. it sounds kind of too easy to help, but if you don't know what time it is, then there's less, then the brain can't calculate, it doesn't know how much you slept, it can't, you know, it sounds kind of scary to do that actually, but when you let go of tracking and knowing what time it is, then it's such a powerful way of letting go. Like there's nothing I can control here, and when you're not trying to control sleep, it just happens easier, and there's less struggle and trying and figuring out and tracking and all those things. So I think that could really help. But what you describe here about that rush is nothing strange or unusual at all. All right, we'll go move forward here to Aaron, who says, "Hi, Coach Dan. It's me again, Aaron. I left a message a week ago about my insomnia problem since March. You mentioned about confusion success, which I thought makes a lot of sense. I try to be more open-minded this week and be whatever to bad sleep nights. However, this week it really got worse. I had 0 hours of sleep last night and have got to go to work. Some nights I have 3. I feel like I have been educated with most of your learnings, and I'm going timeless and let hyperarousal go away. I'm starting to feel desperate. What do you think I should do? I totally have the sleepiness during the day. I try to be brave at night and tell myself it's okay. I can work even with little sleep, but deep down, I know I'm scared as hell because I felt really tired at work before. Also, I bought your book, Sit and Forget It. I hope that helps. Thanks again, Aaron." Aaron, you know, thanks so much for all the support, for getting my book. I think it will help. It's you know, the content here on the channel, I think it's good content. I mean, I try to do my best, but the book is kind of laid out in a logical fashion. I think that will really help. And you know, I think there's, if we think about it this way, insomnia can be described in many ways, and but at the bottom of it, again, it's this fear of being awake. And when the brain has a fear, it wants to get your attention because it thinks you have to do something, right? And then when you go in the direction of like, no, I'm learning that actually I shouldn't do anything, I should just like not know what time it is and do nothing, then for some time, like a toddler who's used to getting your attention by kicking and screaming, when you give it less attention, that toddler can be like, what the heck? I'm really gonna get your attention now. I'm really gonna kick and scream and shout and really try to get your attention. And that doesn't mean that you're on the wrong track. That means you're on the right track, actually, because that's what's called an extinction burst. You know, before there's an extinction of, in this case, the attempts of the brain to get your attention by making you all scared and stuff like that, there's kind of a burst. There's a burst of that activity before there's an extinction of it. So again, when you start making changes, you often see that you sleep like even less for a while. But if you just know that this is totally normal and a part of the process, then you can just keep doing what you're doing. And when you see that, oh, I slept a little easier this time for no particular reason, think, aha, okay, that was just that extinction burst, nothing strange or unusual. And I think what you're doing, seeing that even if you're really tired in the day, you can function during the day, you know, and you're going timeless. I think all these things are really helpful. So I think in the book, I think will help. So I hope this comment and the book will be really helpful to you, and stay in touch and let us know how things go. Yeah. Okay, that was Aaron. Now, B said, "Hello, coach. I'm still struggling to gather courage to fight insomnia. Recently, what I discovered is that it's not general sleeplessness that I fear much. It is the condition of zero sleep, the fear that I will not even sleep a minute. That keeps me awake. It makes me grab a pill at 3 or 4 a.m. I feel good receiving only an hour or 2 of sleep. It's the idea of zero sleep that makes me very scared." You know, the first thing I want to say here is that whenever I hear like fight, then I know that there's going to be a fight, right? Like, you know, if somebody says, how can I fight this? What we know is that there is going to be a fight, and it's the fight that keeps you awake. So I think it's just always when your mind goes towards how can I conquer, how can I fight, how can I overcome, how can I battle this thing, how can I beat it, then you know there's going to be some more trouble. But when you go towards like there is no fight, why am I fighting? Like it is the fight that's the problem, then things get much easier. This is very. I think what we read about here is what we call the threshold, and it's very common that you have these kind of lines in the sand that you say, I'm okay if I sleep 2 hours, but 0 hours, that's not acceptable. if you look back, oftentimes you can find times where you didn't sleep at all. You had a night where you woke up, you were awake all night, and you probably, you still function during the following day. Like nothing catastrophic happens, and that can often help to see that even if I sleep 0 hours, I'll still be okay, and that's helpful because whenever you have a threshold, whenever it says to here but not further, then that leads to like this idea that you have to maintain that threshold. Why do you have a threshold if you're not going to fight to maintain that threshold, right? And it leads to like tracking how much you slept, knowing what time it is overnight, seeing how close to the threshold you got. So it's really only when you abandon the threshold, and scary as it sounds, you say, if I'm awake all night tonight, well, that's going to be probably pretty tough, but I can't fight this anymore. The more I fight it, the more trouble I'm going to have. Then there's no pressure, and then things get a little easier. So that's kind of what came to my mind immediately when I read this. I think there was a second message from B here, who says, I live in Nepal, and of course I'm struggling from insomnia. I have been following your channel for the past 6 months, but I've not been able to make progress. There are no international payment gateways in my place to enroll into your program. The book Natto is also not available in my region. Every time I watch a Talking Insomnia episode, I wonder how people can accept not sleeping. How can people change the mindset? I'm amazed by the interviews, yet the trick of how to become natto really amazes me, as I am desperate to know how to become natto and why I have not been able to reach acceptance. Can you personally provide some reading material, some snippets of natto that may help me out? I wonder if I will ever come out of this rabbit hole. Yes, it's not easy. It's very paradoxical. It's kind of very counterintuitive. And I want to say that you can, I think a great place is actually the playlist, This is Natto, right here on the channel. In every description, you'll find a playlist called This is Natto. That's a great place to start. I will say this, that I think the most important here is the piece of acceptance here. Oftentimes, when you hear about acceptance, it seems like I should accept. I should be totally fine with having insomnia, with always struggling and not sleeping at all. I should be totally fine with that. But that's not the case. That's not what acceptance means. Acceptance means simply accepting or seeing that you can't control your thoughts or emotions or sleep at any given moment. You can't control how you're going to think tonight or how you're going to feel tonight, or you can't control how much you're going to sleep tonight. And when you see that, just that you can't control things in this moment, then things get much easier and more peaceful, And when you see that, it's always like, it's like life is just a series of moments. So when you see that you can't control anything in this moment, that's all you need to do. You can just accept that I can't control anything in this moment, and then everything is easier, right? And also like this, the natto mindset, if you will, or being not attached to the outcome, being okay if you sleep, or being okay if sleep doesn't happen. It's not something that you can achieve again. If you want it, if you're trying to get it, if you're trying to figure out how can I get that, then that's going to be like a striving or goal-oriented thought process. And so the key is to become non-goal oriented. It's something that you arrive at, if you will. And paradoxically, I think there are some goals that can help with that, and those are related to kindness. So if you make a goal of like, okay, I can have a sleepless night and not criticize myself, that is a great goal, because that really takes away from struggling. It's a peaceful goal. Or I can have a lot of anxiety and still be kind to myself, still do something nice for myself and not blame myself for that. That's a nice goal. Those things can really help to be more non-attached, be more natto, if you will. I think those are some key things that can help you. Okay, let's see what Abhishek is wondering. He says, hi Daniel, I'm 19 years old and have on and off insomnia for 2 years. Earlier, I used to sleep for 8 to 9 hours and feel fresh. It all started due to stress of exams, and I was not able to sleep. And then I Googled about it. I came across SFI. I got really scared. But with the help of my parents and the doctor, I recovered. Finally get started getting 6 hours of sleep. But the fear of SFI deep down was still there. But it again started in October 2020. in which I just slept for 4 hours, then woke up. However, I got better, started sleeping fine, but now it started again in April. Now it's even worse, as I have not slept for 3 days, and it has become normal for me to pull all-nighters. Before April, I was sleeping 7 hours, but one day I did not sleep at all because I was not sleepy, and then saw videos about it. I said, I got worried. I think my insomnia is due to unwanted thoughts, but I'm relaxed. And I think that there is something wrong in my brain, thinking, why can't I sleep? I've been sleeping very bad for 2 months. I usually go to sleep 4 or 5 a.m. because I'm scared to go to sleep earlier. Then I lay for 7 hours with 2 hours of light sleep with dreams. And I think that I've not slept at all. I've insomnia earlier, but it's getting really bad now. When I lay down, I keep checking the time, thinking, why can't I sleep? Sometimes I think I try too hard to sleep, waiting for sleep to come, but it does not have. I talk to my parents, but they think they can't take me to a doctor due to Corona. I should stop Googling about sleep all the time. Is it possible sleep deprivation causes sleep loss, or do I still have the ability to sleep even now? I don't think anything while lying down, but deep down worry of not sleeping is still there. I don't have any panic attacks, and my heart beats fine. But maybe due to my thoughts, I've read about insomnia, and whenever I close, I try to distract myself, but negative thoughts keep coming. My eyes are watery, and it's affecting my mental health. I feel like doing nothing. Thanks for suggestions. They will be really helpful. Abhishek, I want to say, thanks for reaching out, and your story is again, I know I've said this several times, even just in this episode, but very common story. And what we learn here is about priming. I call it priming, which is that there is an initial period of sleeplessness, and that's when the brain starts thinking that being awake at night is a threat and a problem. And then something can happen, like you can just get distracted, or you take some medication for a little while, or you do some CBT, or something happens, and then you sleep well again. But there's still that little fear in the brain, right? It's still not gone because it hasn't really understood what happened, And then there can be some stress, and you sleep a little, and then that fear is triggered again in the brain. It's like, oh my gosh, now we're going to be awake all night, and then you struggle again, and then for some reason you get distracted, you don't think so much about it, and then you sleep better again. But now every time you have an episode of like trouble sleeping and you don't understand why, it's just like this fear in the brain. It's afraid of being awake. That gets kind of strong. The fear gets primed. It gets stronger and stronger with every episode. And then, sure enough, then there's a stressor again. And now like the insomnia is more full blown, and what you did before doesn't help because you don't really understand why it helped, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So nothing strange or unusual here. I think it does help a lot to stop Googling, for sure. I've heard that so many times. So many people told me, like, it's kind of hard because you have that urge, like, I gotta find out what's going on. And the internet is just full with information, right? So it seems so logical that you can just Google and find the thing. But problem solving, the act of trying to find the problem, is the problem you're trying to solve. So it just keeps going. So I think not Googling is really helpful. I think spending time here, just educating yourself, will help. I think that going timeless really helps. If you look at your own message, you can see that there was, I don't know how many mentionings of time at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 7 a.m. If you kind of not know what time it is at night, that really, really helps. There was some mentioning here of trying to kind of control thoughts, and these unwanted thoughts are happening. And that's tricky, but it's really like we all have a lot of thoughts, and they are normally fleeting. They're naturally fleeting. Thoughts just kind of come and go unless we try to stop them. When we try to stop them, then they become really sticky. So knowing that can really help. But the timeless thing, not Googling, learning more, I think those things can really, really help, Abhishek. So yeah, stay in touch and let us know how things go. And with that, let's check out what Grace is wondering here. Grace says, hi there. I had a sudden bout of insomnia out of nowhere. I'm averaging about 2 to 3 hours per night, often not falling asleep until 4 or 5 a.m. When I do sleep, it's due to sleeping pills. It's very new to me. I'm 27 and my sleep has always been great. I'm considering signing up for your course, but realistically, I'm concerned that my case of insomnia is too severe. I've read that insomnia is defined as taking longer than 15 minutes to fall asleep. Can you let me know your thoughts based on previous clients you've worked with? Absolutely. I will say immediately here, Grace, that yeah, sometimes we don't know why it started. It can seem out of nowhere, but there's probably at some level, you know, with insomnia, there's always some level of fear, and it can be like a random night when you don't sleep, and the fear may not be obvious, but there was maybe some fear, or maybe there was some kind of circumstance. Maybe you slept a lot during the day, you don't sleep at night, or maybe you're up. Maybe there was some circumstance that led to not sleeping, and without you knowing it, the brain started to think that this could be a problem, right? And then the fear of being awake, that becomes a thing, that drives it. And medications, it can be really helpful to know that medications really, they work by delegation. It's not that the chemicals make you sleep, because that's impossible. Nothing can make you sleep. And if chemicals could make you sleep, then we wouldn't have insomnia, right? It's when you take something and the thought becomes, oh, this is going to take care of sleep for me, then you're not doing anything to sleep. There's no effort. And with there's no effort, then sleep can happen. It's when we're trying to sleep that sleep doesn't happen. And when you see this, you're like, oh, the medication never made me sleep. It was the delegation, the act of like delegating sleep to the pill. That's what helped. Then you can see that, oh, I don't need to delegate to sleep. I can just delegate to myself. I can be like, I don't need to do anything. I can just be in bed and read a book or do something I enjoy. And when sleep happens, it happens. You kind of delegate to yourself. That can be really helpful. But yeah, the 15 minutes, I don't know where that comes from. I don't know who came up with that. And so I want to say insomnia to me is not about how much you slept or how little you slept. It's about fear. It's how scared you are. And actually, clients that are like really anxious and really scared often do really well, because it's so obvious that it's fear driven. It can be, or let me say, when the fear is obvious, it can be a little easier. When somebody is just like completely in Oz, I call it, like has no clue why they didn't sleep, and it's all a mystery, it's all a complete puzzlement, bewilderment, then it can take a little longer. But when you understand that it's fear, that really helps. And I think, and I just want to say that both my programs, which is BedTyme, the app, and the Sleep Coach School's Insomnia Immunity program, the group coaching program, you can try them risk-free, which means BedTyme is a 1-week free trial. So you can just remember to unsubscribe if you don't want to continue. And with the Sleep Coach School, it's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if within 30 days you don't feel like it's helpful, then you can just let me know, send me a message within the Slack channel we use, and I'll refund you. So you can always check those out if you think they'll be helpful for you. Okay. So that was Grace. Now, let's see. Brian asks, hi, Dr. Daniel. I just recently discovered your YouTube channel, and I'm planning on buying your book and or enrolling in your program. I just have one question prior to doing so. I fear that anxiety in relation to insomnia wakefulness is the primary driver for insomnia. Then how does it initially begin? Before I started having issues, early awakening, I certainly had no fear or anxiety concerning insomnia. So that couldn't have been the causal factor. So why is the primary causal factor now? Also, any fear or anxiety I have is largely subconscious. I don't consciously worry about it. I do life as usual. I'm just tired all the time. Any avoidance of life activities is due to lack of motivation by unbalanced biochemistry. Yes, so the question here is, if fear of or anxiety is the relation to insomnia is a primary driver, then how does it initially begin? Yeah, that's a good question. Like it can begin for it can begin with some random thing. Like let's say you went out much later than you usually do and you didn't sleep much, and there was no fear around that, but the brain just took note of this. Like this was a little unusual, there's no fear. It's just kind of almost like a curiosity, almost like the brain's just like, maybe this could potentially be a problem. And then again, subconsciously, you may go to bed next night and you don't feel anxious or stressed or anything, but the brain is still like, what if you don't sleep too much? What if sleep doesn't happen? Like that subconscious thought is there, that idea is there, and then you sleep little. And then the brain's like, oh, wait a minute, there's really something going on here. We should really pay attention to this. And so that it can start with something completely random. and that fear can start in a kind of sneaky fashion. Nothing strange or unusual at all about that. So yeah, hope that helped. And the fatigue and lack of motivation is also very common. And when you like what you learn about insomnia really can help with that, with all of those sufferings that we go through as humans. Okay, so let's take a look at what Ibrahim says. He says, "Hi Daniel, I'm reaching out again. So at first it was working wonders. I was getting back to my regular routine of sleep, but now a week and a few days later, it really isn't working the same. I take it around the same time, wake up after 2-4 hours of sleep, can't fall back asleep for hours, and when I do, repeatedly wake up after vivid dreams. I really want to squash this problem, and I don't know what to do. I wish I could go back in time to the beginning of May and somehow prevent it. I haven't even suffered from insomnia, and I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm acclimating to the feeling of little to no sleep, a tad bit, but I still am extremely exhausted." Ibrahim, sorry to hear this, of course, but you've already seen the magic of like nothing. You've seen the magic of being okay with being awake, etc. The confusing thing can be that when you start reading the book, Set It and Forget It, for example, or you follow the channel and you're like, okay, I get it. I'm going to get up at about the same time and I'm not going to check the time at night and there's nothing to worry about and the sleep happens a little easier. Then it can seem like because you are doing these things, sleep happens easier, but it's like these things actually led you to be more okay with being awake at night. You were trying less, you were delegating, let's say, you're not trying at all to sleep. That's where sleep comes from. But then for some random reason, there's a little bit of residual fear. You sleep a little one night, and then the brain goes like, okay, I'm going to do all these things that I did. But then, of course, you won't sleep because you're doing things to try to sleep now. And just seeing this is so, so helpful, because when you see this, it's kind of like there's no secret. Aha, I was trying to sleep. I was trying to make myself sleep. That's, of course, why I didn't sleep. And now I can just abandon that. I can abandon this fight, And again, which we've talked about a couple times in this episode, is like when you want to fight it, squash it. I want to squash it. Then there's going to be some squashing, But the thing that's going to be squashed is not the insomnia, but rather like you're going to kind of squash your sleep, if you will, right? So it's abandoning the squashing, being like, peaceful, being at peace with it, stepping away from the struggle. That's what really helps. So I hope that helped, Ibrahim. Okay, let's see what Asray has to say. Asray says, I had problems with sleeping and staying asleep, and the doctor gives me trazodone, and I feel it doesn't do much, and I need more help. We talked a little bit about this earlier in the episode, which is that medications work by delegation, which is when you take something and you think, oh, good, I took this thing, I don't need to do anything to sleep, then sleep can happen because there's no trying. But if you take something and you're like, I don't even know if this is going to work or not, let's see what it does. Oh, it doesn't do anything. Well, if you're not delegating, if you're still trying to sleep, you're still thinking about sleep, wondering, pondering, expecting, waiting, then sleep isn't going to happen. So nothing strange or unusual whatsoever. I think understanding this can help, and just generally, again, educating yourself on the channel, understanding what insomnia is, that really helps. So I hope that was helpful, Azrai. And Travis says, how can I sign up for a one-on-one session with you? I tried to download the app, but I have an outdated phone. How much? And can we do our session on a laptop? So I don't do any one-on-one sessions, and the reason is that it may very well seem like if you could like talk to me for an hour, then you could tell me everything, and I could tell you like the thing, the trick, the exact thing you should do. You'll be on your way, quick and easy. But it doesn't work like that. Insomnia and the path to not struggling is about learning, and you can't. It's kind of like how if somebody says, "Oh, I would just want to talk to you for 1 hour so I can learn how to play the piano," it's not going to work like that. It just doesn't. It takes time to learn, and it takes time to unlearn. And I think if somebody would talk to me, they would maybe feel like a great relief. Oh, now I know what to do. But then like a week later, it's like, oh no, that didn't work. I need to talk to you again. So that's why I don't do one-on-one sessions. But the Sleep Coach School's Insomnia Immunity program is, you can do that with a laptop. And I have drop-in classes where we talk. There's a video-based curriculum. There's Slack channel as well. So I think that could work really well if you'd like more support, of course, Travis. So I hope that helped answer the question. And now we turn to Daniel. Hi, Daniel. I've been watching your videos on and off for almost a year now. They've been a huge help for me. I don't really have a question, but I'm going through a rough patch that I want to talk about on your channel. I've come a long way from when my sleep anxiety first started last year, where I was lucky if I even got 1 hour of sleep at night, and this lasted for about 4 to 5 months. Now I'm at a point where in my recovery where I hit a few speed bumps, and they only last for a night or two, then I'm back to weeks of sleep. But for some reason, the last speed bump I had lasted for about a month, where I sleep for what felt like an hour or two, then not being able to fall back to sleep, which was very frustrating to me. But I eventually got myself out of my intrusive thoughts, and the last 7 days, I felt like the best sleep I gotten this year so far. That was until last night, when I had something kind of interesting happen. I woke up in the middle of the night because I passed out with my contacts still in, and my light in my room was on. This isn't anything new for me, because even before my sleep anxiety started, these things would always result in waking me up in the middle of the night. So I got up and went to the bathroom to take out my contacts and came back into my room. I was feeling very sleepy and at ease, so I turned my light off. But instead of just going right back to bed like I've been doing, I made the decision to turn on the TV and watch a show, because that's what I would do in the beginning of my recovery to help me fall back asleep. Well, I think this backfired for me, because about 5 minutes into my show, I started getting intrusive thoughts about my sleep, which led to me tossing and turning until the sun came up. I think it was a mistake to act as if I was at the beginning of my recovery and not acting like I had the sleep confidence again, which has led to me thinking about sleep all day. I guess my biggest issue right now is the frustration that comes along with the recovery, because even having the knowledge I need to gain sleep confidence, I still let these negative intrusive thoughts come into mind. I also have a problem where on my bad days, I can't help but miss the days when I never had sleep anxiety and was able to sleep almost anywhere at any time, which adds to the frustration. Those past 7 nights of good sleep I didn't have any negative thoughts or thoughts in general about my sleep, and it felt like it would never happen again, yet here we are. Yes, I think if we start with the last thing here, I felt like it would never happen again. That's, to me, when I read this, is a classic, like, I think I got this, I've figured it out. And when you think I've figured it out, that almost always means you're gonna have some more trouble. When you see, on the other hand, there's nothing to figure out, meaning I can't do anything to sleep. There's nothing I can do to sleep. That's when there's no more struggle. And about these, like, one thing that I thought was really important here was I made a decision to turn on the TV and watch a show, because that's what I would do in the beginning of my recovery to help me fall back asleep. Here again, we have this idea that you did something in the beginning that made you sleep, or that helped you sleep then, and then you want to do it again. But in reality, what happened back then was that when you turn on the TV, it made you more okay with being awake. It made you go towards, like, okay, it's okay to be awake. You know, there's no enemy, there's nothing to fight. And so the idea was the opposite. The idea was it's okay to be awake, but now the idea is it used to help me sleep. So that you see, like, the same act can have like completely different outcome depending on how you think about it. So if watching some TV is like to become more okay with being awake, okay, cool, that can help. But if it becomes a way to try to make sleep happen, try to facilitate sleep, then you're gonna end up awake for quite a long time, probably. So I think there was some other things in the end that I wanted to comment on. Which was, okay, the frustration. My biggest issue now is the frustration. And frustration really is a feeling of being unable to do something. So it's always helpful to think, what is it that I feel like I'm unable to do? It's either I'm unable to sleep, or I'm unable to control my thoughts. And no human being can do those things. No human being can control their thoughts or their emotions or sleep. So why be hard on yourself and feeling like you're failing when the thing is that you're trying to do something that's literally impossible, right? So I think that leads to self-kindness, where you're like, I have no reason to be hard on myself because nobody can control these things. That leads to peace. And the other thing was confidence. I need to gain sleep confidence. This is a very tricky one. It can seem like people who sleep well have confidence, that they go to bed like, yeah, I can make this happen. I can make sleep happen. Yep, I did it again and again and again. I got this confidence, but it's not at all like that. People who sleep well have no sleep confidence whatsoever because there's no trying whatsoever. There's no thinking about sleep. Sleep confidence is helpful when the confidence that your sleep system cannot be broken. There's nothing wrong with you. Insomnia is just a little bit of anxiety. That's all it is. That type of confidence, knowing that there's nothing wrong with it, I think is helpful. But trying to gain confidence or build confidence is an act of, it's a goal-oriented activity. It's an activity that leads to performance anxiety. And it also leads to this situation where you slept without struggle for some time. You're like, yeah, I got this. I got good confidence now. Then you have one night where you don't sleep, and then it's like, what in the world? I thought I had it. I had all this confidence. The confidence is all gone. That just shows us there was a little bit of misunderstanding of what sleep confidence is. It's not the confidence that you can make sleep happen. It's just the confidence that there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you when you're awake or whatever happens. Finally, I still let these negative intrusive thoughts come into my mind. Not at all. Like they just happen by themselves. And again, we don't have control over our thoughts. But it's when we have these thoughts that are like warning thoughts, that are like, what if this happens? You can't sleep. There's something wrong with you, blah, blah, blah. When we try to stop them, then they become real sticky. But when we're like, oh, I have these thoughts and I understand why, I've had some fear, but I'm not going to try to stop these thoughts, then the brain is like, oh, there's no pushback. Then I don't need to push this message. So, okay, then things get a little easier. So I hope that helped, Daniel. And thanks for supporting the channel and being here. And let us know how things go. I hope this really helped. And then I think this is, the final message here is from Jake. Let's read this. Jake says, hi, Daniel. Well, I thought I had this insomnia thing under control. And, for everyone who's come to this point of this episode, already now we can learn, right? Because we just had Daniel said, I felt it would never happen again. And of course, then it did. And then Jake says, I thought I had this under control. And then we know there's going to be more struggle. Right? We already know that. Let's continue reading. At first, my anxiety during the day was quite severe. So at night, I would bombard myself with your videos, listen to Oasis, my favorite music group. Also, and I also got my GAD under control. Around 2 weeks ago, my daytime anxiety really settled, and I even stopped reaffirming your teachings through watching the channel every day. I finally felt confident enough to go at it alone. Yesterday was busy, a typical Saturday. I didn't even give sleep a thought. Unfortunately, when I got into bed, my mind started racing. Every so often, I would start to drift off, but wake up suddenly thinking there was something I needed to do. I spent around 2 hours like that, with something resembling sleep occurring around 5 to 8 a.m. Now, all I've been thinking, what if this is me from now on? Will I have to start taking Ambien to sleep? This is my last week in school, and I really want to enjoy it and not be consumed by this issue. Thanks, Jake. Jake, I think to me, what we already talked about one thing, which is when you think you have something under control, that means you have an idea that there is something you can control, and then there will be more struggle. But when you see that, I did well before because I wasn't trying to control anything. I was actually willing to have anxiety. I was willing to be awake at night. I wasn't trying to achieve anything. Then you start seeing like the path towards never struggling again. So you've already seen the magic. It's just like seeing that you didn't do anything to make that happen. So you can't do anything wrong. There's nothing you can do actually at all. And I think that was really the most important one. I didn't hear really anything. Was there anything else? Seeing why. I think that's the most important thing we talked about. We talked about confidence again before. Just now we talked about confidence with Daniel. And so, I think there's nothing stranger here. This is just what I call a speed bump. And it's just an opportunity to see why you were doing well before this happened. And again, you can also maybe check in that new playlist on speed bumps. So, okay, Jake, everyone else, I hope this helped. It was a little bit of a kind of compressed episode, but I really felt like I had It's been a lot of time since I did open class, so now I think we're back on track and we can do them more frequently. So yeah, hope this helped. Be in touch, everyone. Let us know how things go. Leave comments and keep sending messages to the link, and we'll go from there. So hope you have a nice week coming up here, and thanks for checking in.